Hi, and welcome to Joining Us, celebrating 50 years of Bands of America. My name is Chuck Henson, and for 35 of those 50 years, I was the primary public address announcer for Bands of America's series of regional and the Grand National Marching Band Championships. Now, over the course of the next 25 episodes, I'm going to do my very best to bring you the people and stories that ultimately have created the excellence that is BOA.
I just was fascinated by this man's marketing ability and the idea that he was putting together a national organization.
Well, one was having hamburgers directly across the table from Dr. Ravelli. So I'm literally watching him eat a hamburger thinking, that's William D. Ravelli having a hamburger in front of me.
Back when Marching Bands of America began in 1975, I and my high school marching band were one of the first to participate.
10 years after the experience, I'm still hearing from kids who thought that was one of the coolest things they ever got to do.
I mean, when you went joining us, those kids went nuts right then. You could have read out of a phone book from that point on. You had them.
They're just going to blow the roof off the place. Like, I get chills thinking about it.
The rifles would spin rifles, then they would catch them and they would fall on the ground at the end of the tune.
Like a death drop.
Yeah.
What's in your blood? If you cut my arm, I'll bleed Bands of America, music for all.
What Marching Bands of America started was innovative, so new, so exciting.
50 years, a half century? Are you kidding me?
Happy 50th anniversary to Bands of America.
So get your program, find a great seat here in our virtual stadium, and get ready to learn everything you ever wanted to know about Bands of America. Joining us from Bellbrook, Ohio. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I'm Chuck Henson, and this is Joining Us, chronicling 50 years of Bands of America history. We had such a great time last episode, and I'm equally as excited today to talk to our guest. It's Greg Bimm, and I'll give you a little bit of an introduction on Greg, and then we'll bring him in. Greg was, if you don't know, director of bands for nearly 50 years at Marian Catholic High School in Chicago Heights, Illinois. 7 national championships, the concert bands, the symphonic bands, all with major accolades. You know, Greg doesn't really like to be called out for all the awesome things he's done in the world. But one of the things that really stuck out to me as I'm preparing this bio was that in 2019, the man was named a Midwest Clinic legend. Now, if you're familiar with the Midwest Clinic, wow. Well, please welcome Greg Bimm. Greg, how are you?
I'm great. Feeling good.
Legend. You know, I got to think that when it comes to the number of people that have been named Midwest Clinic legends, that's got to be a pretty small little club. But wow, what an honor, huh?
I have a picture of the class of the year that they did that, and I laugh at it because I look at it and it's like Gary Green and Mallory Thompson and Cam Stasa, and I'm looking at these amazing people who have had such a profound impact and going like, okay, this is a little bit like Sesame Street, you know, which one of these is not like, that's exactly the way that I feel. Yeah.
I talked about this with Tim when we were talking before, but I suffer from it. I don't know if you do. Have you ever suffered from like imposter syndrome?
Every day, like literally. Yes. There hasn't been a day that's gone by that I just go like, God, man, if they figure this out, you know.
If anyone figures out that I don't really know anything about what I'm doing, this is good.
Exactly.
The ruse is up. Well, it's certainly not a ruse when it comes to you. As I'm looking at your screen, and this is a audio only podcast, but I can see what's behind you, and that wall is packed with accolades and honors. Tell me that story about how that stuff came to be.
Well, it's stuff that just accumulated over the years at Marian. Like you said, I was there for a long time. So if you're any place in a long time, lots of stuff accumulates. And when I left Marian to come home, all of these plaques and things, I put them in boxes and brought them home. And so there are stacks of boxes, and I didn't have a place for the boxes. So I said, well, I'm just going to hang these up then. So
is there literally like a Illinois Music Educators grade 1 ranking for concert festival up there?
Actually, those are all at Marian. Anything like that is, you know.
Good. These are just for you then. All right. Well, let's go back to the beginning at Marian. 1977?
Yes.
How old were you in 1977?
I would have been 25 at the beginning of the year and 26 in December of that year. I turned 26 my first year.
And that's your first teaching job?
Actually, I taught in a small town over near Monmouth, Illinois for 2 years. I lived above a feed store.
No kidding.
Yeah, I did. And when I came to Marian, I lived above a garage in a one-room apartment. So
I sense a theme here.
Well, it's, you know.
When you walked in, when you got that opportunity at Marian, I mean, there was a program there, but it was little, right?
I think we had about 55 kids something like that.
From how many middle schools?
50. We don't have a feeder system. And
Right.
so the kids just come from all over the place.
So let me make sure I got this right. You had a band of 50 to 70 that came from 50 different schools as you walked in the door.
Yes.
And what does that sound like?
Well, no, they were fine.
Yeah.
They weren't beginners or anything like that. And the older kids, they had some pretty good chops. It was a very inexperienced thing, but we grew really fast. I mean, the numbers at Marian grew like 55, 70, 90, 120, 150, 170 in consecutive years. So it was a very fertile ground. Marian is a college prep school, and so pursuing excellence is attractive.
What do you attribute to that growth?
I think when we started to have success, and by success, it's just performance level, along with the accolades, that plays too, more people wanted to be a part of that. And so the kids that were there stayed because they could feel every year. I often attribute it to literature that we were playing, because the literature got more and more demanding and more exciting every year. And so, after I think my fourth year there, we played the Persichetti Symphony. And then the next year we were playing Persichetti Masquerade.
Wow.
And the next year, Sketches on a Tudor Psalm and Chant Symphony. And then the next year we played the Transcription of the Pines of Rome. So,
did you have a team then, or was it just you?
No, it was just me. And luckily, from the marching band standpoint, it was a very early time in the development of competitive marching bands. A friend of mine, Dale Hopper, had just published like the first manual on how to march chorus style. He was from Herscher High School. Appropriately, it was called Chorus Style Marching by Dale Hopper, and it was really, really good. But
I remember that.
Everything was very basic. Like I taught the drums and I taught the color guard and I choreographed for the color guard. But back then, choreography was really, right shoulder, left shoulder, tilt to the right, slam this way.
I know for a fact that when the summer camp was going on, and you had mentioned to me previously that before you could afford to come, you would literally watch Marie Chapinski and Sal Salas through the fence.
Yes.
As they were doing color guard moves?
Yeah.
Did you pick up any slick moves from them?
Nothing that I could do. They were so far advanced, for me. I remember I tried, there was a cliche or a gimmick or a move that everybody was doing at that time. The rifles would spin rifles, then they would catch them and they would fall on the ground at the end of the tune. Okay.
Like a death drop.
Yeah. And so I had to practice that because I wanted to teach it to my kids. By that time, it was my third year at Marian, and I was married, and we were living in an apartment complex. So I was out on the lawn of the apartment complex, spinning a rifle, catching it, and then falling. When you fall, you had to hit the butt of the rifle on the ground to help break your fall. And so I'm standing there, spinning, falling on the ground. Finally, kind of said, Greg, they're going to come after us and make us move. You might need to find a different place to practice, but
you're creating a spectacle, Greg. That is hilarious.
By 1981, we had gotten a color guard person. The middle schools there were 5 parochial Catholic schools that were fee-based programs that Marian had help with. And the person we hired there is a girl named Carrie. At that time, it was Carrie Fund. Carrie Zimney, now married to John Zimney out on the West Coast. The Zimneys of freelancers. Anyway, Carrie had really good experience with color guard she'd marched with the Geneseo Knights, as her dad was the corps director for the Geneseo Knights. And so she was there, and I had met Ward Durrett, he's an amazing percussionist, lives out in Colorado now. And so that became the team of the three of us around 1982, 81, 82, somewhere in there. And from there until, probably 87, it was just the three of us.
Wow.
I think in 87, when Debbie Tully was our color guard person, she had a friend from time to time that would come in. But basically, all the way through about 1990, it was just 3 of us.
I think you're most known, obviously, for the skills of the musicians you teach, but you also wrote your own drill that entire time, right?
Yeah. I try to explain it. There was a time when when you got a job back in the 70s and the 60s, the band director wrote basically it was a football show drill, but you did all of your own stuff. So I learned to do that Bill Moffitt style, patterns of motion, squads of 4, all that stuff, and then adapted that as I grew. And so I wrote drill for Marian for all of the years that I was there. And actually, I'm still writing their drill.
Are you really?
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome. And I think that anybody with any kind of knowledge of the activity would very comfortably say your drills were way out in front of what the rest of the world was doing at a time when that was, as you mentioned, just kind of sort of coming onto the scene. You grabbed it and you ran with it while a lot of people were still learning Pieware. You know what I mean?
Well, I wrote by pencil until 2000, or with pencil until 2003. I wrote in a different way, and Pieware couldn't do what I wanted it to do. So until technology got to where it could do, until I could speak the language with it, I just did by pencil. But along the course of that, there were the great influencers. 1981, we were the demo band at the Summer Nationals of 1981. Larry McCormick called and asked if I could bring the band up and have Bob Buckner write a drill and teach the band. And so I was already writing our drill, but he wrote that one, for that Summer National thing. And in watching what he did and how he did it, I learned an awful lot. That was he and L.J. Hancock and Fred Sanford were the clinicians for the summer. So that was a pretty good week.
Yeah, I'd say, that's a good transition, actually. When did Larry McCormick and McCormick's and what was then Marching Bands of America, how did that come into your purview as a director?
In truth, I visited the summer thing in 1977. I missed 76 because I was going to Western Illinois University to do a year of graduate work. And since I was moving to Western, I couldn't go. And then I was there in 77 at the BOA summer camp. That's when I was watching Marian and Sal through the chain link fence. 78, I missed Summer Nationals because I was getting married that summer. And then from 79, I've been at all the Summer Nationals and summer camps since 79. But in 79, I was still just visiting and trying to learn as much as I could. So I would sit in the stands and take photographs. I didn't own a camera, like a movie camera, and the technology of VHS and all the stuff we have now didn't exist.
Right.
So I would see a formation that I liked, and I would snap like 3 pictures going across the field. And then when I'd get them back, I'd tilt them and paste them together so I could see the whole formation. I still have some of them.
That's incredible. When did you become cognizant of MBA as an organization? To say, I like this, or I want to go check this out. Do you remember?
Well, it really started in 1981, because I was visiting in those first years, like just going to the contest and going to the camp and watching, trying to learn as much as I could, because, man, it was pretty deep water from where my background. And so 1981 was when Larry called me. We had marched the year before, 1980, a friend of mine was the band director. His name is Jerry Robertson, was the band director at Rock Falls, Illinois. And they had a summer contest. And he called me a number of times and kept asking if we would bring the band out. And so I finally said, sure. And so we marched in 1980. We marched at that Rock Falls contest. And there's another one that was connected with that. Then came home. Then in 1981, we were going to do it again because it was really successful and the kids really enjoyed it. And that was the year that Larry called and said, can you bring the band up? We'd like it to just be the exhibition band. We're going to teach you, we'll bring in some experts and they'll teach a show and you can do it as the opening to Summer National Finals. I'm like, that's a great experience. Cool. So we brought, 120, it wasn't the whole band, but it was like 120, 130 kids. Spent the whole week, learned a show from amazing minds and then performed it. And then we started competing in 82 and we competed 82 through, I think 88 was our last year. In 1989, we brought our symphonic band. We didn't compete in the Summer Nationals marching. We just brought our concert band because we had an opportunity to play an exhibition. So
that would have been close to the end of Summer Nationals, as I recall, anyway.
Yeah, it was the very last year.
Did you see in your kids after that experience in 1981 a change?
Yes. It started really in 80 when we started doing this summer because it extended the year and we were doing a marching show after we had a year to teach the kids how to play. So we had just finished playing, like in 1981, like we said, we played the Persichetti Symphony. We had just finished performing the Persichetti Symphony, and then we switched to playing outside and played the same way. So all those summer national bands, those kids had a year of really solid playing under their belts. And so that helped them along. And then just being a part of that community where marching and high-level performance is very highly valued made a big difference. Instead of being isolated in our own little suburb, down in the south of Chicago or the south suburbs of Chicago, we had a chance to kind of see the world a little bit more.
I think that's one of the best things that comes out of this organization is nationalizing music education, putting folks like yourself into a pool. I mean, think of the other directors that are of this caliber that you've been able to hang with and learn from and teach. I mean, off the top of my head, Bob Buckner comes to mind. You had mentioned him previously. But even folks at all the schools that have achieved that level, those directors, there's a little society that's created there that you guys all share information, right? You hang out and
we all learn from one another. And by working together, you raise the standard. And that goes, from way back in the beginning with Bob Buckner and such. L.J. Hancock, Tim Salzman was at Herscher for a couple of years there, and
I'm thinking Bill Watson.
Absolutely, and that was a little
Alfred.
bit later. That was after Grand Nationals really got its legs, and when it moved to Indianapolis. Once it moved to Indianapolis, we started going. We've been there ever since, and then that's when you find it got even broader. We had wonderful bands from as far away as California in the summer. The first band to win was Live Oak.
Yes.
And they won the third year as well. And they were from California. Independence won in 1981, I believe, talking about Summer Nationals. And so we learned from them. And then Grand Nationals got to be even bigger with the regionals bringing even more people in. And so, yes, you get to watch a band from Spring, Texas in 93 with Bill Watson. They were amazing. They're just so good.
It was amazing. Yeah.
But it's not a competitive thing where you're out to beat somebody or anything like that. You're just working. Well, the thing I said earlier, which one of these is not like the other, which one doesn't belong. Whenever you go to a big contest like that, you want to be one that fits, you don't want to be the one like, man, what are they, and so that's a driving thing. But by pushing the envelope for each other, you're always raising the level. One of the best things I think that ever happened to Marian was when Ken Snook moved to Lake Park.
I was just going to mention the relationship between your two schools. I think you guys embody the cooperation versus competition aspect of this.
Yeah, we are and always have been really good friends. And both of our bands lifted the other by just, continually working to be as good as we could be, and it was the healthiest of circumstances. I had a bag that I carried all the years that I was competing from 1980. There was just a black bag that I always carried on the marching field. And I still have a Lake Park pennant. In that, I carried it with me from...
Really?
Oh, man. It would have been at Grand Nationals in Indy, so it was probably around the 1990s somewhere. I think it was before they won in 96.
Did Ken give that to you?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And I remember, if you remember the way that the Hoosier Dome was, you would perform in finals, and then you'd go around and sit in the stands in the back of the field. And so... one of the first, it wasn't the first year, but one of the years that we were both in finals, we were walking towards the back stands and Lake Park sitting up there. So I reached in my black bag and held up my Lake Park banner, So it was.
Did they go nuts? They must have.
Absolutely. And that's still the same banner that I have. It's pretty worn, a little bit threadbare now, but so am I.
All right, let's take a moment for a quick break because I want to listen to some of your stories. Now, remember, if you've got a special Music for All or Bands of America memory or story, you can record it and be a part of this very 50th anniversary podcast. Just visit musicforall.org/podcast to contribute your story.
As a band director from an inner city school with very few performing opportunities built in, I really enjoyed the Bands of America experience. Not only did my students get a chance to go to UIL, NTCA, and all the indoor groups that were going around, but the Bands of America experience was uniquely different, gave them an entirely different stage, an entirely different set of commentary, and just an experience that still lasts. Even 10 years after the experience, I'm still hearing from kids who thought that was one of the coolest things they ever got to do.
I want to ask you just a couple more things about marching band, then I want to go into concert band and talk about the National Concert Band Festival and your role there.
Oh, sure.
There are two things that stand out for me. You'd mentioned the old RCA Dome, which I loved that building. By the way, my seat in the RCA Dome was the best in the house. 50-yard line, second level. I mean, it was the perfect place to watch marching band. Now, I don't know if you've been up to the booth in this new building, but it's at the 0-yard line at the roof. That's where the PA booth is. Yeah. It's still a great view, but a little nauseous at times.
Not the same. Well, the Hoosier Dome, I always felt there was something about the ceiling was suspended, was pushed up by pressure.
Yeah.
Okay. And so the pressure inside the dome was a little bit greater than outside the dome on street level. And I always felt that had an effect on our sound because the best Marian ever sounded, in my opinion, on the marching field was in the Hoosier Dome with the way that I write for woodwinds.
Interesting.
Woodwinds would just sing in that place.
I can tell you, as someone who lived in that building for nearly a week, we created a condition known as dome head that was just awful. Your sinuses would lock up, and the difference just being in that pressurized environment for that many days was just brutal. But in the new building in Lucas Oil Stadium, I happen to know that there's a tiny little corner near Band X. It's called the Greg Bimm Nook. What is that? What is that?
It's right at the entrance where the
It's pin entrance and exit. Yeah.
Yeah. For the front ensemble, there's a little opening where they keep garbage cans, essentially. And when I'd go back we perform in semifinals, or always when I was going back before the announcements of finalists or whatever, I would be looking for a place that was quiet and, just out of the way. And so I would grab a chair and drag a chair back in that room around the corner and just sit there.
Folks, it's no bigger. Only you fit in there, right? It's literally a design nook.
Yeah, it's not a room.
Yeah.
It's a little place where you can fit, 7 or 8, big garbage.
You
things.
and your thoughts. You can fit you and your thoughts in there.
And my garbage.
Well, then it started getting labeled after a while. And
yeah.
I walked by it one day and there was a sign on it that had your name. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. That's awesome.
The sign was still there this year, even though I'm retired. So I felt special.
Fantastic. And then the finalist directors meeting has your name on it now.
Yes. And I have actually this is not visual, but I'm pointing right now over to my right. I have that hanging, a replica of the carpet that they have.
Of the mat?
Of the mat.
Yeah.
That's really, really special.
So for those of you that are not in the know, after the announcement of finalists, the finalist band directors and their teams come to a certain meeting room in the bowels of the building is probably the best way to describe it. And it's a room that holds about 50 to 100 people or so. So in that room is everybody who has just made finals at the national championship. And everybody's happy and everybody's congratulating each other. And as you walk into that room, there's a piece of carpet that's been created that has 2 shoes on it. And it says the Greg Bimm finalist meeting room. How did that come to be? Did they just spring that on you? What was the story?
Yes, they did. Well, here's the real story.
No,
an interesting side story. We had made finals at Grand Nationals for 34 consecutive years. That's not counting Summer Nationals before that. And I do a whole clinic on lifeline of band, sort of how things move in band world. And every school is open to change. Marian is smaller than it used to be. And it's inevitable that at some point the numbers change, whatever.
Schools get redistricted, anything like that, yeah.
Yes, it was inevitable that at some point we wouldn't make finals. The first year that we did not make finals was the year that they presented me with that, or they named the finalist room in my honor.
Wow.
And, to a degree, I think that can add more significance to it. You know what I mean? Not just to me, but everybody. It's not it's not something that's easily earned or that can be taken for granted. Sometimes when you go in that room, I've seen people who were going in the room for finalists and they were so concerned about where they were going to finish in the finals that they weren't able to really enjoy that.
Yeah.
To
live in the moment. Yeah.
And so to a degree, the justice of the way that all worked out is probably even more special.
I can recall sitting at regionals and at nationals, several finalist directors meetings, and hearing whoever was running the meeting, whether it was at a regional or nationals, and hearing them say to that group of people, if you're not going to be okay with 10th place tonight, there's 30 other band directors outside this room who would love to be inside this room right now.
Absolutely.
And it puts perspective on things. And for the folks that pressure their kids, I see those directors, we all see them going through the flow, the ones that are wound so tight and their kids are wound tight because they put so much pressure on them to perform at that level. But when you live the excellence every day, then it comes easy when it's time to actually put the lights on.
Our philosophy was always to do our very best to pursue excellence until the last possible moment. So when we went to Grand Nationals, we practiced the whole weekend. We didn't sightsee. We just, we tried as hard as we could until our last performance.
Well, that's because you added 10 pages of drill the week of Grand Nationals.
That has happened. But part of it, the philosophy was it's not about the numbers because the numbers can shift. If you're a trumpet player in a trumpet section and you have to be first chair to feel like you've succeeded, what happens if you're in a section of monster players? Maybe third or fourth chair there is a better player than who's first chair in a section of bad players.
Fact.
And it's the same thing. And so you focus on what you personally have accomplished, the excellence. I knew going forward, as things, how the world progresses and stuff, there would be a time when we would not make finals. And I knew also that was when I would know for sure whether the philosophy that we had tried to live for those 40-something years worked. Because, if you make finals, you can always say, well, it doesn't matter whether we make finals. If you win, you can say it doesn't matter if we win. You have to not make finals to know whether it matters or not. And so they announced the finals that night, and I went back. The band was...
They meaning me.
Yes. Broke my heart. It was all you.
Oh, so sorry, Greg.
We always stay in schools on gym floors, and so we were staying at Avon High School, and all the kids are back at Avon waiting for me to come and let them know how the evening is going to go. Now, with our current technology, they already knew what the result was, but I came back and talked to them, and as the night progressed, it was, it wasn't people jumping up and down and cheering or anything, but they were good. They were fine. And before very long at all, it was like common. They were laughing, talking, having pizza, just enjoying alumni coming by and stuff. And at that point, I knew that what we had preached for all those years worked.
That's beautiful. As a young teacher, when you started, how do you feel Bands of America fit for you as a teacher? And then as a kind of a flip side to that question, how does it fit for your students? Because you essentially helped to build it. So what you've created is what people get to enjoy today. But at some point you must have thought, this is worth my time.
It's the place where you can pursue excellence in a field where others are, you're in a place of pursued excellence. And so there's that. The audiences are the kind of audiences that appreciate that pursuit and appreciate what you're trying to do. The adjudication and comparison between bands is a great thing. There's no pretend there. The numbers are real.
I know how it feels for me. And what I'm learning is that same feeling is pervasive throughout everyone who touches it.
One of the things, if I can back up on that just a little bit, from the beginning with Dr. Tim, they were talking about, the phrase that people coined, everybody's, we're all winners in life and stuff. And what it really means is we're all winners by pursuing the best that we can be. And that is a truth, and so by having the band, first of all, as a director, having myself in the company of all of those people, not just the people who win from year to year, or not just those people that we mentioned earlier, but everybody, the people who are bringing their band for the first time, the people who are striving for knowledge just so that they can lift themselves a little bit further. Being in the company of all of that is way beyond healthy. It's the best that it should be. And for the kids to be in that arena, to see things in that arena, to be around others who pursue excellence as they do, to live life the way that they live life, to have the values that we try to teach. All of that is just huge. And it's it has been the perfect place for that for us. That's my 50-year experience or whatever it is.
Yeah. We keep coming back to a pervasive sentiment of you become like the people you associate with.
Exactly.
When the Concert Band Festival first kicked off, it was 1992. Did Scott McCormick reach out to you about that, or did Richard Crane initially make the reach?
I think it was Scott, because we talked about it and I was watching it develop a little bit. But as soon as I found out who the clinicians were, like who the people that were going to be there, I would have played anywhere. I once told Scott McCormick, and we were talking about the Concert Band Festival, and I said, Scott, I don't care where you have it. We'll play in a barn. If we're going to play for guys like Ravelli and Painter and those guys, we'll go anywhere. I'll play in a tent.
Right. Frederick Fennell and Ray Kramer and all those folks that were at that first one.
And so when we were getting ready for 92, I took the time to put things on the wall, like posters for everybody that was a judge, including like Lynn Clark. He was the woodwind guy that year, and And so as the kids are getting ready, I'm telling them who they're going to experience, like who they're going to play for, and telling them about William Ravelli and who, the legacy of, we're talking about we won these national champions. Well, back in the 1920s and 30s, that's what Ravelli was doing with his contraband. And so they were really prepared to play for those people. And, they were very excited about that. In all ways, I remember talking to one of my flute players, and she was in the honor band. In that year, the honor band was made up of members of the other bands.
That's right.
And the director was Fennell. And I remember talking to the kids, what to expect and all that. And after the first rehearsal, I talked to one of my flute players. I said, well, what did you think of Dr. Fennell? And her first comment was, his feet are so tiny and he's wearing these tennis shoes and he's just so cute. I'm thinking,
He was a tiny little man. It's fun. As a conductor of that ensemble on stage, I remember introducing you at that first one. I was doing all the podium work before we got the amazing Carl Grapentine attached to that event. What was it like for you at your podium, looking at your band and looking up, and there's William D. Ravelli looking at you?
I remember he was just leaning on his hand, not looking like he was thrilled to see me. And I don't mean mean. It was just like he could care less about what we had ever played before. Now I had met him a long time before, so he knew, at least from that, short experience when he came down to visit Western. But I'm thinking, okay, in front of me is this guy and behind me is, I always say John Painter first because he was, absolutely iconic to me.
Yeah.
And thinking, okay, we're going to play for these people. It was thrilling and absolutely frightening, because the ears are so good. You know that there's no hiding from ears like that.
Mm-mm.
Like they're going to hear everything and they're going to know exactly how things should move. And it's not just a matter of their perception or their opinion. Their opinions are steeped in, all those years of working with great bands. I do have a really good story about that first one. One of the things about the National Concert Festival is after the concert, you go to another room and have a long, like a 40-minute clinic with an icon, a great clinician. And our clinician that year was Arnold Gabriel.
Gosh.
Actually, if you look over my shoulder right there where I'm pointing,
Yeah.
that's Arnold Gabriel.
There you go.
That's from my 20th year of marriage. But anyway, actually shortly after that, but I wanted the performance to be special. This predates the contest thing. And so I was looking for things to play, and I wanted to play Medea's Meditation and Dance of Vengeance by Samuel Barber. Well, it wasn't published. There is a published version now that came out a few years after 92, actually. But I wanted to play that, could not find it anywhere. I found a list that said it had been played by a military band somewhere in France, but that was, not accessible. And so I made up my mind to do my own transcription. And so I spent the 2-week Christmas break that year. I remember specifically because I had just passed 40. I had just hit 40, actually. And my eyes started to change, and I had to have readers so that I could see the Barber score and see where the notes. Yeah, it was terrible. But nonetheless, I wrote the transcription over Christmas, and we learned it for the festival. And it turned out nice. It was good. John Painter commented that he really liked it and stuff. The real story is Arnold Gabriel. We went into the clinic room, and Gabe worked with a little bit of one of the marches. We did a thing called Fliegermarsch. It's an old Herman Dostal march. He worked a little bit with that, and then he spent a lot of time on Medea, just saying this and that, she was thinking this, or this is what this is supposed to be, and all that kind of stuff. And right towards the end of the clinic, he looked over and he said, "Do you mind if I have some fun?" And I was like, "You're Arnold Gabriel. You
do whatever you want with my kids."
Exactly. Go ahead. And so he looked at the score, and it's my pencil. It's nasty. My manuscript is not very good. But he looked at the manuscript and basically the piece is in 2 parts. It's the meditation, which is slow and really intense. And then it goes into this nasty, very difficult dance that's, like in 5/8 and all kinds of stuff. It's just got a boatload of really significant conducting problems, it presents you with a lot of stuff. And so he looked and he found, like, I don't know whether it was letter L or whatever. I'll just use that. And he said, letter L is where the dance starts. And he just goes, "Can everybody go to letter L?" And so all the kids turned to the dance. He closed my score and conducted the whole thing, that entire dance sequence, from memory.
You are kidding.
I was like, no. He didn't do it from hearing it one time. He told me later, like I said, how in the world? He said, well, I actually had a transcription of that written for the Air Force Band while I was there. And so I did it a number of years ago. But I'm still going, after a number of years with no time to study the score, he could recall from memory this, I would not have had the courage, even having worked on it all those weeks. After all that time, I would not have conducted it without a score. Like,
wow, that's amazing.
He was just absolutely amazing. And so, you're talking about the effect that it has on kids. The kids get a chance to hear from that kind of a mind and be rehearsed from that kind of a mind. And then they see this exhibition, and it wasn't Arnold Gabriel showing off. It was him just enjoying the music.
I mean, he said to you, can I have some fun with this? That was the whole point.
Yeah. And so that was my first experience at the first concert band festival.
Did you feel after that first event was all wrapped up and in the books, did you say, yeah, this is going to be something? Like, you've watched it evolve over time.
Absolutely. The impetus for that was to try to recreate the original days of the National Concert Band Contest that the Hobart Band won and the Joliet Band won. And it was a big thing back in the early 1900s. And so they were going to bring it back. But they wisely, I think, under the guidance of John Painter and Ravelli, but especially Painter, I think, made it a non-competitive festival so that, nobody's going in there coming out with,
with a win, basically. It's all a win. You're on the stage, there's your win.
Yeah.
Getting the invitation. It's like Midwest. Getting the invitation is the win.
And playing for those people, playing for those judges is the win, for sure.
It seems to me over the course of time that a lot of people that want to get an invitation to Midwest have put the National Festival now on their list to say, we have to play this if we want to play that. Because those guys are all there.
I think there is a lot of truth to that. I think the National Concert Band Festival in and of itself is special.
Well, they're much different concepts. I mean, one is performance
are.
only, right? And the other one is an educational-based convention of bands. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I have been a fan of the concert festival, since its inception.
I have my favorite story from that weekend, that first festival weekend. Well, one was having hamburgers directly across the table from Dr. Ravelli. So I'm literally watching him eat a hamburger thinking, that's William D. Ravelli having a hamburger in front of me. And then that night at the concert, we presented all of the evaluators with a little thank you for coming. And it was Frederick Fennell's next up. He was the next one to get one. And I'm at the lectern and I do his little spiel. And you mentioned your young flute player who said how tiny he was. He was maybe 5 feet tall. I mean, very small, and had that gray Leopold kind of hair that like a concert conductor should have. And I did his introduction from the mic. I took 2 steps back to allow him to come on the stage. He had already started shuffling toward the center and was right behind me when I took 2 steps back, and I ran right into him, right on the stage, right in front of everyone. And of course, now I could feel the heat rising in my face, right? I'm mortally embarrassed. I turned, thank God I didn't knock him down, but he had taken a couple steps back and was steadying himself. And I was like, oh my gosh, Dr. Fennell, are you okay? He literally adopted a fighter's stance as if he was about to punch me out. Like, how dare you, young man? And I couldn't stop laughing. And then he continued on out as if nothing had happened, basically letting me off the hook for my giant guffaw that day. What a great experience that was for everyone. You could feel it in the air. Every second of it, you were making history and starting something that's going to endure throughout the test of time.
One of the things that I believe the story is right, that all of the clinicians signed each other's programs. I don't know that that's still a tradition, but I remember that
they did.
They were all.
I don't know if they do it anymore or not. You're right. But that year they did for sure. I think the event is so big now that it would be
less manageable. Yeah, it was pretty quaint. And one of the things about that too, that I think is so important is they held the number of bands that played at a certain level. Essentially, John Painter led the listening stuff and talked to Scott and said, we have, I don't remember, it was 8 bands in the first one. I think it was 8. Said we have 8 bands that really deserve to be on to play at this kind of a festival. Essentially, do you want us to lower the standard? And they decided, no, let's keep the standard high. And that, to this day, that kind of philosophy makes it very special.
If you were to look into the future and say where all of this goes after this, what do you think? Is there a next level for Music for All? I mean, you're on the advisory board still, right? Are you part of that?
As a retired person, I am now retired from that. So
Correct. Comma, however, comma.
no, and
There's no retiring from music education. You just came from summer camp.
exactly. I know all those people. And I think, I don't know whether it will spread through having a national jazz festival, which I think would be kind of a very cool thing, and open a new place. I know that they've explored the orchestra and probably choirs on the list. And so all of that is really good. With bands, I think continuing to extend the concert band festival and make it as special as possible, and maybe help it reach as many people as possible. I know Scott Casagrande and Music for All have regional festivals that they spend a lot of time working on, and I think that's a great thing, as are the marching band regionals.
I think any opportunity they get to metaphorically touch a music program is a good opportunity, and so I'm such a firm believer in the mission statement of trying to make sure that every student gets opportunity to active music making in their scholastic career. And I think that on the low end of that, the elementary end, the middle school end has a lot of places that they could vary into. But I'm not the one making those decisions. But one last thing. So if you had the ear of a new band director right out of school, what advice would you give them as far as where to take? I'm not trying to create an ad for, take your band to BOA, but as far as the philosophy and everything, what advice would you give them on how to grow their program like you grew yours?
Well, I said that I had met Ravelli before 92. It was back in 1986 when I was doing graduate work at Western, and I was his guide. He was there for a band festival thing. And I got to be his guide and ask him.
Did you jump at that opportunity? You must have gone, holy crap.
With both feet. And, you were laughing about having a hamburger with him.
Yeah.
I got to drive from Macomb, Illinois to Peoria, Illinois to pick him up at the Peoria airport and drive him, it's about a 2-hour drive together with just me and William Ravelli. And, that's
surreal.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
There's a movie in there somewhere, I think.
Well, I was driving the chair of the music department's car. It was a new Cadillac. So I picked Ravelli up and we're driving, heading back and, heading, towards the university. At one point he looked over and said, "Son, is this your car?" And I just started to laugh. And I said, no, man, I drive a real old beater Chevy. And he smiled. He said, "So do I." And so we found this kind of hamburger common ground that made me more comfortable. It was still talking to Ravelli. So
his reputation preceded him as being mean, quite frankly, and, throwing things at his students and stuff. And he was the nicest person you could possibly have met when I met him.
There are other people like that I've known, and who, when they were pursuing excellence in music, like when they were pursuing making the music as good as they possibly could, it was unrelenting. Like they were going to find a way. And I'm not an icon like that, but I have the same trait of stubbornness. Like my kids knew at Marian, if I wanted a phrase to be a certain way, I was going to go after that phrase until I heard it the way that I wanted it. Now, Ravelli, like some of the other icons of that time, grew up in a different era. They grew up when the Toscanini dictatorship kind of,
like corporal punishment and stuff. I mean, they, kids got spanked at school then and things like that.
Yeah. And embarrassing someone or really putting someone in a terrible spot or a really harsh spotlight, that was a common way of doing things. Not that it was right, but it was the way that the culture was. And so as culture has changed, so have the band directors feeling this, but still pursuing excellence with the same integrity. But I was going to say that when I asked Ravelli what advice he would give to me as a young director, he said, study your scores, or he said it this way, wear the seat of your pants out studying your scores. And to this day, I absolutely believe that the first order of business is to know your music inside, outside, upside down, backwards, forwards. Just, you cannot demand more of your kids than you have to demand much more of yourself than of any of the performers.
I don't think there's a single person in this activity would not think that of you. I mean, you epitomize that in everything that you do. And I'm personally so happy to know you and to be a friend and to have seen your programs over the course of time.
You're very kind, very kind.
Any final words you want to throw at us?
I'll finish. I have a little bit more for new band directors. Get your kids involved. Like, you have to open their eyes. You have to get them to see more than what they see. Even if you're in a big, wealthy suburb somewhere, you still have to get the kids out so that they can see what's possible and they can experience things, because they only will reach what they can observe. I've talked to people who are from small country schools, and they'll say, well, we couldn't do BOA. Well, one, yes, you can. And two, getting your kids to see that so that they can learn to believe in themselves. Like, there's nothing holding those kids back from playing as in tune as anybody else. You know, you may have a band of 250 kids that plays with a big sound and can fill the Lucas Oil Stadium, and they play in tune and they play beautiful phrases. You could be from a small farm school where you've got 35 kids in the band. They can still play in tune. They can still play beautiful phrases. They can still make heartfelt, meaningful, exceptional music. And so once they know that they have the power to do that, great things are possible.
Yeah. You don't have to be a big band to do well at Bands of America. You have to be a great band to do well at Bands of America.
Yeah, agree.
Beautiful sentiments, my friend. Thank you. Thank you very much for taking time out of your day to do this. I've learned so much myself, and I feel like I knew everything, and I certainly don't. So thank you very much, Greg.
Thank you. This has been so much fun.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Joining Us podcast. We are celebrating 50 years of Music for All and Bands of America. Do you have your own story or memory to share? Well, I want to hear it. You can record your own story by visiting musicforall.org/podcasts. We may just include your voice in a future episode. Hey, thanks to Yamaha, our national presenting sponsor, and don't forget to make sure you're subscribed to the Music for All Podcast Network, wherever you get your podcasts. I want to thank Ben and Laura from the team at Music for All for making this happen and lining up all of our guests. And of course, the way it sounds, that's the magic of our executive producer, Patrick Keller.